Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Yana Nigelo. I'm the New Yorkers for Donovan Campaign Finance Director. It is my privilege to welcome you all here today for a special town hall on food policy with Chef Jose Andres, who's joining us as a special guest. Just a couple housekeeping rules before we get started. If you all would please put yourselves on mute. We'd love to see your faces on the screen. But in an effort to minimize any background noise, just put yourselves on mute for the duration of the Zoom. If you have questions, comments, please pop them into the chat. We will do our best to lift those up during the course of the conversation. To moderate a conversation between Jose Andres and of course Shaun, we have Samantha Katz who's joining us. Samantha is an activist, community builder, connector, business advisor, and investor who brings 2 decades worth of experience in the emergency food management world. So Samantha, without further ado, thank you so much for joining and take it away.
So excited to be here. Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to welcome you all to today's conversation between Chef Jose Andres and New York City mayoral candidate Shaun Donovan. As a food systems activist, I'm very excited to kick off this discussion between 2 longtime friends who've had a hand in helping New York City residents get access to fresh, nutritious food during the pandemic. As I'm sure you're all well aware, Chef Andres founded World Central Kitchen, which activated in communities around the United States and the world to serve families in need of a warm plate of food, and supported thousands of local restaurants in the process. He also runs some of the world's most well-respected and acclaimed restaurants. You can chime in there and laugh. Good job. Shaun, in addition to running for mayor, launched Common Table, which partnered with World Central Kitchen to distribute restaurant meals directly to food insecure families in partnership with philanthropy, food relief, and community-based organizations and neighborhood restaurants. We're going to cover a lot of ground in this hour, with many topics ranging from what a strong emergency food network looks like to how the city bounces back from this crisis to be even stronger than before. Again, just a reminder, we've opened up the chat room for questions throughout, and we'll do our best to spotlight a few. Thank you in advance for your participation. Chef Andres and Shaun, thank you so much for being here and taking the time to discuss these vital issues today. So Shaun, let's start with you. How did you 2 meet and how have you worked together?
Well, there's only one answer to that question, which is I can't stop eating Jose's food. Literally, my first year out of college, I moved to intern at the National Coalition for the Homeless. And this was 1987, not to date myself or anything. I fell in love with this restaurant called Café Atlántico. And until it finally closed down after one of the most remarkable runs in history of restaurants, I think, I was going there all the time through my young life after college, when I moved back to DC and we had our first child, Liza and I used to go. And then when I went back to work in the Obama administration. And so Jose's food has been part of my life for much of my life, most of it, in fact. And, you know, the other thing, it was funny, whenever I'd see him, for those of you who don't know Jose, he is a force of nature. He is his own force of nature. And the wisdom, the amazing ideas that would come out of his mind every time he stopped by the table when I was one of his growing number of restaurants. And he'd start talking about solar kitchens that he was creating in Haiti and you know, I had a little money and a little ability to do some things in the cabinet. And so we started working together. I became a little bit of something of a master of disaster, soon my role at HUD and then OMB, and ended up partnering with him in a bunch of different ways. And when I finished my stint, I did a lot of work in Puerto Rico where he did amazing work. And so when the pandemic came on last year, And I started talking to all my friends in the restaurant world in New York and saw how terrible both food insecurity and the survival of restaurants was getting. My first call was to Jose to say, what can we do about this? And we started scheming, as we always do when we get together. So that's how it started. Almost 30 years ago. Yeah.
Long time ago, my friend. Yep.
Chef, there's a great question to kick us off in the chat. So I'm going to throw it out there in combination with what I had for you. Devin, thank you for bringing this up. Devin asks, how is it that you get everywhere so quickly? And the question that I want to tag on to that is, with the number of countless emergency conditions that you've worked in throughout the world and witnessed firsthand, and really the severe effects of food insecurity, what are some of those unique challenges that you get into and you face when trying to feed people with dignity in those locations?
Well, thank you for that question. And Samantha, I don't wanna, waste the amazing opportunity I have that they're asking me this question. But we need to be asking this question to you, because many of the people are joining here to support Shaun campaign. I hope they are aware of the amazing role, Samantha, that you play as a modern Clara Barton when New York was in need of help. And on September 11, you step up and you began feeding anybody that was in need of to be fed. You, Samantha, you are a modern Clara Barton, and it's thanks to people like you that people like me learn about how we all together can be able to bring very quickly solutions when people need them. That's what all we should be doing, bring real solutions, not speeches, use solutions with boots on the ground. Samantha, thank you very much, because you were there in September 11, helping organize 24/7 feeding everybody in New York that was in need of a plate of food. And I thank you, really, on behalf of Shauna and I and all the American people. Thank you for everything you did that day and everything you kept doing thereafter. Samantha, are you there?
No, I'm stunned.
I'm with God.
Wait, no, did you answer the question?
Well, listen, you learn when you live in Washington, D.C., you learn also to be a little bit of a politician, and it's in a good way. You make sure you talk about the things that are really important.
No, I think
there's a great question you may be getting.
I
but said that, why we do what we do? Because I repeat myself, moments in the past that I wish I was more a man of action, a citizen of action. I watch in the distance what happened in Katrina. And I watch in the distance what happened at the Superdome. And I wish I could go back in time and be there with people like you, Samantha, people like Shaun, and be there in the Superdome as people were arriving, finding a place to call home after the devastation that Katrina got, and just feed them and provide them water. Some of the very big problems, they have very simple solutions. We must be embracing the complexities. We must see that every problem is actually an opportunity to start creating something better. But we must do in emergencies in America and around the world with the urgency of yesterday. People don't want our pity, people want our respect. The way to be giving respect, in a way, is being with them, walking the way from the first second something happens. And we can do it. I believe we can do it. We can do it if we think out of the box. In his time as secretary, Shaun showed us that he was a thinker out of the box. The old recipes are good. We all like the old recipes. But when the old recipe sometimes doesn't come right out of the oven, it's time to start changing the recipes. And this is what we need to be doing. Keep doing what is working, improving what needs some tweaking, but more important, bring new ideas. So why are we so quick? Because when there is a will, there is a way. And right now, you saw us not only responding to COVID-19, it was great the partnership World Central Kitchen did with Shaun in New York. We were feeding almost every single hospital, very much public hospital in New York that was in need of meals. You saw World Central Kitchen. We were all across America. In the process, we got hurricanes, we got fires. Let me give you just one final to the answer. Beirut, the big explosion that destroyed such a beautiful city by the port. Within 12 hours, we were in Beirut doing more than 10,000 meals a day. Why? Because that's what World Central Kitchen, very simple solutions. If you bring the restaurants of the world and the food people of the world together, imagine what cannot we do. This is what World Central Kitchen did in this pandemic, almost 3,000 restaurants across America. That's what we are right now in India, just bringing the food people to feed the people in need. Simple solutions that have real boots on the ground impact.
You're spot on, and you've created a system that allows you to step up and quickly. So it doesn't matter how long it took you to jump into action. You've created that ecosystem that allows you to do it anywhere and at any time. So thank you. Shaun, to New York City specifically, and throughout this pandemic, not just here, but in other places, for safety reasons, people were homebound in neighborhoods where there is absolutely a lack of access to healthy and affordable food. How will you and your plan bring high quality and affordable food to these New York City neighborhoods?
Well, just to build on something that Jose said, we have to think in the box and outside the box too. And something that President Obama used to say to us all the time, which also builds on what Jose said, is never let a crisis go to waste. And so as you're thinking about emergencies like this, the question is, how do you build a better system for the future? Not just to rebuild what you had, but to reimagine the system in a new way. And so just a little more on the partnership that we built as COVID was emerging. I was talking to all my friends in the restaurant world and hearing about the devastation they were feeling. But I also knew, because of my experience in disasters, having seen the way World Central Kitchen responds, that our our in the box emergency food system was not going to be up to the task. And so the idea was not just to say, let's get restaurants cooking, but how do you make sure that they can deliver these meals directly to people's doors so that they don't have to go wait in line for 4 hours at a soup kitchen, or they could get it right at their door. They could go to a restaurant and pick it up. And so what we added to what World Central Kitchen was already doing was two things. We developed an app, which is now called World Central Kitchen Direct, or WCK Direct, that they're deploying across the country and hopefully across the world at some point. But also we designed it so that our federal food systems through FEMA and hopefully ultimately SNAP could actually get restaurant meals in the future, in peacetime as well as wartime, if you want to think about it that way. And this was the idea of, let's take this emergency and in the box develop a new system, but then let's take it outside the box and change the system more broadly going forward. And so we got going in New York. We got New Orleans to get FEMA dollars and put a model in there. California, because of the leadership of World Central Kitchen, started doing this as well. And think about it. What you're doing is activating kitchens. It's almost like a microgrid in energy, right? Instead of having just a few points where if COVID developed, these big kitchens would go down, get all these kitchens cooking, particularly in the hardest hit neighborhoods, put people back to work, and also develop these meals. And so what we're now talking about, and we started to work on, is how do you change the SNAP program to allow folks to go get hot, fresh, culturally appropriate, healthy meals at restaurants as an alternative all the time, not just in disaster. That's one way to take this sort of out of the box and change it. And that's something that is really important to me going forward in making sure the food insecure can get healthy food. A second critical thing I would say goes back to a place that I'm really proud of called Villa Verde. It's the most healthy, sustainable, affordable housing in the city. It's in the South Bronx. And when you go there, you find a farmer's market on the weekends in the central courtyard, but you also have stepped rooftops that have orchards and vegetable gardens growing. The children come home from school, pick these, eat them for dinner, and it creates a very different understanding and intimate relationship with food, with healthy food, in a way that's really powerful. At the ribbon cutting, Ruben Diaz, who's the borough president of the Bronx, said, "Let it be known, where the Bronx was once burning, we're now building gardens in the sky." And so how do we bring exactly that to every community? I have one of my favorite proposals that I'll implement as mayor is called 15-minute neighborhoods. Right now, you can predict the life chances, even the life expectancy of a child, by the zip code they grow up in, and that's wrong. We have to reorient our food system so that every single New Yorker has within 15 minutes of their front door the healthy food, whether it's access to a community garden, a farmer's market, restaurant meals through SNAP, or healthy groceries and other places that they can buy. If we really reorient the system in that way, we could make sure a child's destiny isn't determined by their zip code, and ensure fresh food and a healthy life for every child in the city.
This is a great topic, innovation, right? Innovation lending itself towards helping the many, the masses, because there's a unique set of challenges that are faced by each different group and constituency, depending on where they are in the food ecosystem. Chef, this question's for you. Are there any lessons learned from your work in other cities that you think would actually lend themselves to enhance our food policy here in New York City and create greater food access and job opportunity beyond what Shaun has already started with you?
Yeah, the situation that we are facing today in America, and we know it, is something that since I arrived has been always part of the same topic. We've been talking about food deserts for quite some time. What Shaun is describing here about doing these farmers markets or these rooftop greenhouses and farms, and it's one of the many ways that we can be making, obviously, in New York and actually in every big major city in America, be part of that movement. What we need to start, I do believe, sincerely doing is we are in this moment that in the situation of the SNAPs that Shaun was mentioning, and something I've been supporting from the beginning, and it's a fairly idea that keeps moving, but we need to make it possible, is that when people have food stamps, usually in the communities they are, which are the very poor communities, low-income family communities, there you have no markets, there you don't have business. Sometimes that is not money that goes to help families in a very big community. Instead of staying, that money is staying in their community. It goes far away because those families go to buy into another neighborhood, in another zip code. That's why it's so important that things like SNAPs that people can be using in a food truck, in a local diner, will help make those low-income neighborhoods richer, but making sure that the federal money that goes to help those Americans stay in their communities. In the process, those local businesses doing better, in the process, hiring locally, in the process, bringing better quality, fresh fruits and vegetables. All of a sudden, the dollar that comes from the federal government is multiplied tenfold and achieves economic growth in every community. So that's why things like these are very important. So the technology plays a role in, obviously, many ways. Even for emergencies, still, we need to learn how to adapt. We know that if we have any way to have a digital way, people have the quick access to be able to spend money, SNAPs in supermarkets or in the restaurants or in the farmers markets. We will be smarter if people buy in farmers markets, maybe to double down what families can buy. Why? Because in the process of doubling down, you are helping rural America to do better, because the cities must do well, but so the rural areas surrounding those cities, they must do well also. And all of a sudden you start finding ways that 1 + 1 becomes 3 and becomes a big multiplier. When I'm saying that technology, we need to be careful, is because if everybody's on digital and you have a major earthquake or a snowstorm or hurricane and the entire electric grid shuts down, the entire satellite system shuts down, the cell tower shuts down, the gas shuts down, you want to make sure that we have a system that very quickly in the emergency, we can be adapting so the families still can go to a supermarket and have access to food and goods, even if they don't have this digital way to be doing this. So I grew up in a country, in a city called Barcelona, which if you see all the markets that you have per neighborhood, very much you will not see a neighborhood that doesn't have a market that serves the needs of the people, the richer neighborhoods and the not so rich neighborhoods alike. So I do believe that for the future of our cities and for trying to start bringing the gap must be part of the policies on every city, in every state, as a country, that will not be food deserts no more. And we need to be thinking out of the box by private sector, I do believe is the way to be doing it. But sometimes we're gonna have to be needing the support and the push in the back from the federal government or the local government or the state. And these should be alliances that then brings the best power of the federal government with the best power of the private sector, with the right support of the local NGOs, and then the citizens that want to start maybe a business and that they must be receiving our support too. Is no way that in the poor neighborhoods in America in the next 25 years, we must have food deserts. If we want to, we can end food deserts in 4 years. We make sure that the federal government puts the money behind on the construction of those markets. We sure that we bring a lot of small business owners that can occupy the stalls of those markets. We keep giving support. All of a sudden, we can be ending food deserts overnight. And this is a low-hanging fruit to me that seems highly unreachable. But I do believe this can be happening in every single city in America. And I know with the experience that Shaun had in housing and urban development and beyond, this will be something like he will be highly capable of achieving in the years to come.
Hear to that. When there's a will, there's a way.
I'm putting ideas in his brain, and that doesn't mean he's going to endorse them. But I know he agrees with all those ideas because they are very simple, pragmatic solutions that they need to happen. There's no other way forward without finding solutions to those problems.
I would also say that we have a moment of opportunity right now, and Jose and I have been speaking about this, and he's been, building on his relationships in DC, and I've been connecting him to people. This is, I like to describe it as a New Deal moment at this moment, and SNAP in particular is a very good example. President Biden's already said we need to really fundamentally change SNAP. Right now, you can't afford to eat healthy, decent food and feed a family with what comes through SNAP. And so it's got to fundamentally increase, but it also has to become much more flexible to support all the things that Jose is talking about. And this is the moment to do it. We have an opportunity, I believe, with this incredible alignment that we have of resources coming this year to do exactly that.
It's we would be remiss not to talk about restaurants and their workers during our time together. So I want to make sure we hit on it since we're about halfway through. Restaurants and their workers, as you both know, and I'm sure everybody in this room knows, have been hit extremely hard during this pandemic. New policies such as outdoor seating, to-go cocktails, a host of new delivery options for food and alcohol have seemed to really create creative new revenue streams for New York City's hospitality industry in particular. Shaun, what will your food system plan mean to New York City restaurants?
Yeah. So first of all, it is absolutely imperative that we get this aid. I mean, we've had trillions of dollars of aid that's been created, and including billions of dollars directly to restaurants. But that's not going to matter if we can't actually connect it to restaurants. This is why World Central Kitchen is so important, is finding the nonprofits, finding the intermediary organizations who really understand restaurants, how to put it to work, that stop, many of these restaurants are barely surviving, much less able to fill out, forms and all the bureaucracy that comes with it. And so really finding the partnerships, which is what I've done for 30 years. I started with a nonprofit in the Bronx doing exactly this with small owners of buildings, many immigrants. How do you get the help there so that it actually creates momentum and opportunity for folks without overwhelming them with the presence of government? And so that's one of the things that has to happen right now. And World Central, it's exactly why I went to them and said, let's get this Common Table program started, building on the work you're already doing and all the relationships that you have. So that's one. Second, the Hippocratic Oath is first, do no harm. And unfortunately, we've seen the city increasingly do harm to our restaurants. And if they're not just going to survive, but thrive, we have to make it simpler to get a permit, to put up a sign. And I hear this again and again from folks all over the city, that we're not doing enough to really make that possible. And then, Samantha, we got to get to what you said, which is to use this moment, as I said, not to let the crisis go to waste. If we really could reimagine our streets, we're a 21st century city with 20th century streets, and we have to bring them into the 21st century. And we've seen cities, Paris and so many others, who were ready in this moment to start rethinking the way we use our streets in a really powerful way. We needed a plan. We didn't have a comprehensive plan, but we do need to build on the lessons of this moment. And I would create a truly comprehensive plan to rethink the way we're using our streets, not just for restaurants, but for pedestrians, for bus rapid transit, for all these new modes of micro mobility. And even the way we pick up the trash could be fundamentally do much more recycling, composting, all of those things. That's possible. And it has to begin with rethinking our streets. And again, making this a moment where we take that in a new direction. So I have many, many proposals around this, a new office of the public realm, using much more technology and sensors and other things in our streets. But particularly for restaurants, I think it is an opportunity to make open streets permanent and to create much more flexibility in how they use public space for dining. And look around the world. Barcelona is a great example of how we do that in so many other places that we can learn from.
In terms of transportation, logistics, and climate resilience, there's a great question that came into the chat from Nick Shufro, so I'm just going to read it to not mess it up here. Can we look at another weak link, which covers the topic, and another where Shaun has provided leadership, the area of climate change and food insecurity? We're aware that Hunts Point is a central area for food distribution for 17 million people in the New York metro area. How do we address the issue of climate change, sea level rise that could negatively impact Hunts Point, located in a food plain?
Yeah, this is exactly why after Sandy hit, we brought together architects from around the world and tried to reimagine some of the critical places, Lower Manhattan, Staten Island, the Rockaways, but also, as you say, over half of the food that New Yorkers consume, it runs through the South Bronx, and yet it is highly vulnerable. But this is also an opportunity not just to think in one dimension. We have to think in a multi-dimensional way about how we use those waterfronts and how do we engage citizens there so that we're reclaiming the Bronx River, for example, which was highly polluted. You could have lit it on fire for decades, given all the pollution in it. It's now finally becoming clean enough that we can access it and use it in different ways. And so bringing an integrated landscape between Hunts Point and the waterfront, both to protect from climate change, but also to activate the economy and bring in partnerships that would allow food vendors and others to use spaces that are public around the market, connecting it directly while bringing more folks in the South. You've got the poorest congressional district in the country right next to this incredible economic generator. And yet we've done very little to create those partnerships as well. And so this is an opportunity, I think, to do all of that at once. Like, I like to say most people think of public service as the art of the possible. I like to think of it as the art of the nearly impossible. That's what we did after Sandy with Rebuild by Design. And we laid out a plan for Hunts Point that would have done that. And now's the time to go implement when it's been left behind by, for 8 years by this administration.
A common theme throughout this discussion that keeps surfacing is, in order to get things done, we need real collaboration and coordination. And it's key in all of the examples that both of you gentlemen bring up through your experience in working in crisis. Chef Andres, this one's for you. In order to solve for food systems disruptions, challenges amidst these crises, what processes, resources, tools, or technologies do we need to be better prepared going forward?
Well, listen, I know in the chat also we have this woman, Eloise, she's in Dominica. And I wanna, listen, Eloise, I have people right now in Dominica, they're meeting today with the Prime Minister. You will hear more about World Central Kitchen there, okay? So don't worry, we'll be there next to you. Now, we go back to New York and to these questions. I think the only way to be ready for the future is very much what we've seen that happened in this pandemic. When I began following this pandemic on the 31st of December of 2019, during the month of January, obviously watching what was going on in Wuhan, one of the things I began doing was going back to 1919, 1920, and trying to read anything that could give me a clue about how we were addressing the badly called Spanish flu over 100 years ago. So I do believe that it's very important that we study the sequences of events of the past, the good and the not so good ones, to try to understand how we can face the challenges of today, and even more important, the unknown challenges that are coming in the future. But obviously, if we are not bold in the thinking and in the process, I believe that we will always fall short of what we want try to achieve. We saw in Puerto Rico how the entire island was devastated after Maria hurricane category 5 very much cut through the middle of the island during almost 2 days, and the destruction left behind. World Central Kitchen there, we've been partnering with many as a young and older farmers that at one point they were trying to give up and move somewhere else. Why? Because banks were not giving loans, et cetera, et cetera. It was complicated, let's put it this way. We were very lucky that we had that extra cash that people kept donating to us, that we were able to channel the money through almost 240 farmers in Puerto Rico. What we've been doing, we've been helping them not only put their farms up and running, but rebuilding, making sure that resilience will be key. For example, if we had a greenhouse farmer doing lettuces and herbs, to make sure that he will have big containers attached to the ground, that he can put his entire operation in one of those or two of those containers, protecting all his hardware in the event of a possible new hurricane. This way, we are already thinking about the future, how to prepare, how to make sure that they will be able to be in business few days after the event happens. So this is a smart way to do it, trying to think about the future. So we are ahead of it, and we are not just coming from behind. But also we need to be thinking in a very, very big way. Today, no city in the world is disconnected from what happens in another part of the world. Whatever you may be doing the right things in New York, in Washington, in LA, but if other parts of the world are not doing the right thing, it's gonna be affecting us at the end. One of the issues for everybody to understand that nobody talks It's not a problem so much we have in America, but it's a problem that affects big parts of the world. 3 billion people, mainly women, 3 billion people still cook with charcoal or wood as the only way to feed their families. This is putting a huge amount of problems by deforestation, by helping, unfortunately, go on global warming. And until we don't address such a huge issue like this, I'm very afraid that we're going to be always falling short on, we say that the water is rising. If water is rising, it's going to be very tough to control it. Really very tough. You can build whatever you want. It's going to be very tough. You see, in the case of Puerto Rico, that was things that you could do that right there in the community. You could think small. In the case of this clean cooking, it's something that we need to be thinking very big. The United States as a government and the rich countries of the world must have real leadership in real time, making sure that the low-income families of the world, the poor of the world, have the same access that you and I will have to cleaner technology. You see, in the process of achieving this, we will actually fight climate change. We will actually be able to foresee that we could make sure that the water doesn't rise, and so many other issues that obviously go along those. So what I'm going to say is that we need hands-on local solutions and decisions, like what Shaun, if he becomes mayor, will do in New York. But then we need also to connect that local thinking with the very big thinking that really affects every single human on planet Earth at the same time. So we need to have this kind of local solutions, but with a global conscience. If we do that, then we can probably find solutions together to the many of the issues we face.
Circular economy thinking. I'm going to ask one more.
Amen.
I'm going to work one more question as follow-up to that. It goes back to the question that came up in the chat. When a crisis happens, who do you go to first to activate in a community? And in that concept of, we need a diverse set of thinkers at a table in order to solve for these challenges going forward, and 100% agree with you in preparedness. Crises are going to continue to happen, so we might as well work together to prepare for them. Who is that first call to, and what does that round table look like? And then Shaun, maybe you could follow on to that with, how are you building that round table of constituents that his dream team that he wishes he had when he goes into battle in these moments?
Well, let me tell you, right? For us, for me, it was always a dream that we are millions of restaurants around the world, and we are tens of millions of people of food, that we love food, and our profession is food. And at the end of the day, between you and me, almost anybody knows how to cook. Anybody knows how to open a box. Anybody knows how to drive and deliver. At the end, it's amazing, because these people tell me, Jose, I don't have any asset to contribute. And I'm trying to say, we all have an asset to contribute in those moments. What World Central Kitchen tries to do is use, when we come from the outside, obviously you need to come because the locals, they've been, wiped out in terms of everybody's looking for their family members, their friends, their property. They are trying just to wake up from whatever the emergency at hand was. So it's good that you come relax from the outside to give support. But at the end of the day, for me, it's always very clear that nobody better than locals to provide locals quick solutions. And we've been very smart on that. It's not like we come with a huge team. We come with the right team that very quickly connects with the local leaders, chefs, all types of people. Like we partner with Shaun in New York, and all of a sudden, the doors to possibilities of things that requires quick thinking and quick action happen immediately by doing this kind of outside, inside meeting together. So who should be in the table? In the table should be anybody that is able, but we need to be creating, and this is very important, organizations and moments of response that they are way less pyramidal and much more flatter. When it's a pyramid, I may be on the top and Shaun may be on the top, but then you have a lot of people underneath. If I have an idea, because it's mine doesn't mean it's the best idea, but I'm able to think too. But my idea comes down with gravity very quickly. The weight of gravity brings the idea down. Everybody's watching what's happening. Jose is thinking, oh, what? And what he wants to do. And maybe it's the wrong thing. And then good ideas by young people, people that come from the outside sometimes, because they come down in the organizational chart, that same gravity doesn't let those good ideas come up. And then people are working in the pyramid from different angles, so they don't see each other, and therefore they cannot work as one. If in responses, we embrace the complexity of the moment, and we create organizations that are flatter, where people is not the leader by the title behind their doors, but people are the leaders by having the boots on the ground. All of the sudden solutions happen quicker, faster. And even if you make the wrong decision, because you are with boots on the ground, you have the capacity to very quickly change to a better direction and a better solution in real time. And that's what these moments need. Leaders, many people that are leading, allowing everybody ideas used to come to life. The best ones are going to be remaining, and flatter organizations, embracing complexity and understanding that from now on, to plan is of the 21st century. We must adapt. Adaptation will always win the day over too much planning. Obviously, specifically talking by emergencies, the unforeseen circumstances that we are going to keep having. So embracing complexity and adaptation, flatter organizations will win the day in those situations.
Yeah, it's such an important point. And I want to bring this back to COVID in New York, because in addition to the flat piece of paper, I would also say that it's about networks, right? That flat piece of paper represents an incredible network of relationships that if you have to build those relationships in crisis, you'll be too slow, right? And so the question is, how do you tap into a set of networks that exists, rather than thinking that you can do it all top down, as Jose was saying? And just to be very specific about COVID, New York City built a program that served hundreds of millions of meals, right? But they did it in a top-down, almost industrial approach. And if you talk to folks who actually got the food, they would say, this isn't the food I would want. It's not healthy. It's not enough often. And there's not the diversity that you can produce by this incredible network. And so the alternative, when we started working together in Common Table, and this is work that had been done by World Central Kitchen from the beginning, if you really want to find out who's hungry, talk to the folks who already have those relationships in communities, right? So I went to nonprofits like Nos Quedamos and so many others who already were talking every day to the people in their buildings that they managed or the communities that they were part of. And all of a sudden you've opened up very quickly, rather than having to build a whole app or a whole system to measure food insecurity in the moment of the crisis. You're tapping into those networks that already exist, a very flat network as Jose's described, to be able to really get to the folks that are needed. So it's those partnerships. And if you don't have the knowledge, and one of my favorite sayings I heard from moments of crisis is, you can't move faster than the speed of trust. If that trust doesn't exist before you start, it's going to be very hard to respond in real time. And so that was a critically important lesson that I saw after Sandy, is that if you really want to get a flexible system where you have hot, fresh meals, where you're getting restaurants cooking again, it is more complex, as Jose is saying, but it's actually more robust in the long run, and relies on real relationships and on real chefs who can make hot, delicious, nutritious, culturally appropriate. The diversity of restaurants that World Central Kitchen had meant that almost any culture, any religious group could get the food that was theirs, that they felt at home. And this goes to something I hear Jose talk about all the time, just to close. Food is dignity if it's done well, right? And so how do you make sure that we're not just supplying fuel, but that it is dignity that you're providing? Because food is the thing that connects people, especially in moments of crisis.
Shaun, you've built a very robust plan on food policy for New York City and a lot of incredible.
With your help and the help of lots of others amazing foodies in New York.
I was going to say, with a lot of people who are just incredibly talented humans around New York City's food ecosystem, what are the most important things that we get started with?
Well, here's my number one thing. And this goes back to where we started, which is never let a crisis go to waste. What is the thing that right now makes New York feel like it's not alive, right? It is that our storefronts are vacant, that our sidewalks are empty, that we miss that incredible surge of density and life and surprise that we feel in our city. And first thing I would do as mayor, let's fill every vacant storefront with pop-up restaurants. Let's get people cooking. And think about the work that Jose has done, that World Central Kitchen has done over and over again. We know how to get people cooking quickly, right? And let's fill those restaurants. Hopefully they last. And 10 years later, we go back. Maybe they're there as long as Cafe Atlantico, decades later. But let's fill those storefronts as an immediate way to bring life back to our city, to feed people, to bring people together. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just a moment where people need jobs. They need hope, and we have lost 30,000 New Yorkers. We must heal that pain, and there is no better way than to bring people together to break bread in our streets, in our vacant storefronts, as a pathway to hope in this city. And so that's the first thing I would do.
Chef, paint us a picture. What is the future of food in New York City?
A small question.
Yeah. What is the future of food, of the New York City food economy, look like? And what, most importantly, do we need from our next mayor to help us achieve that dream?
One of my favorite books was written by a Frenchman. And, you know, I'm a chef and I'm from Spain. You don't see a Spanish chef openly praising French chef. Even Eric Rippert is like my brother. As you know, he's French. So we always have that friendly tension. But Brillat Savarin said that he brought a book in 1826, The Physiology of Taste. He said, "Tell me what you eat and I will tell you who you are." Very important phrase, very powerful phrase, has many readings. Yes, the food we eat makes every one of us who we are. When I came to New York as a young sailor, first time in 1889 in the Spanish Navy, and I arrived with a tall ship. And can you believe I docked around 30th Street, and where 30 years later, I opened 100 meters away from the place I dock, Mercado Little Spain, 30 years to the day on 30th Street. As Shaun was saying, our city will become the city we all want when our restaurants, streets, street vendors is forever alive again. But I think Shaun will agree with me that the New York, I dream, because I'm a Washingtonian by heart, but the city I spent my early years in America was New York, and I feel at home in New York, and especially more with the big business I have there in Hudson Yards. But the ones that are gonna do well are gonna do well. But New York, we know that is the melting pot city the melting pot that a young guy like me learned from cultures from all over the world, in every one of the 5 boroughs. But it's very important that we don't leave anybody behind coming out of this pandemic, where every single borough, every single neighborhood in New York, the low income people especially, will have access to good fresh fruits and vegetables near the places they live. That those mothers that sometimes they have 2 jobs and they are coming from a long day at work with maybe no more energy to go cook meal, that they could have access in local diners and food trucks to bring food home and feed their children the food they deserve. School systems where every child will have breakfast and lunch, period. Why? Because every American children, every New York children should be entitled to that. Putting those children in the path of success, making sure that we have in the process, like we saw in this central kitchen with my friend Robert Egger, that he says that, you know, charity seems is about the redemption of the giver, when charity and philanthropy should be about the liberation of the receiver. How are we gonna be liberating every receiver, men and women that maybe didn't got the same opportunity I got, but let's make sure we have enough, in my case, training for the restaurant industry doesn't have enough people right now. Let's make sure we train people that they are looking for a place to belong, so we can get them working in the food restaurant industry with good living wage paying jobs and reaching those low income neighborhoods and making New York the city we all dream and we all want. And the list obviously can go on and on. But I always said, we need longer tables, shorter walls. We know that New York is the capital of America, is a city that has fascinating people from all over the world. What New York will do in the years to come is gonna be dictating what many other big cities in the world will do. Let's make sure that we start by making sure that no one New Yorkers that come from places in America and from far away around the world, that no one New Yorker ever will say that food was the reason of why they didn't enjoy the American dream. Food is not anymore the problem for us to solve. Food should be the opportunity for all of us to seize. And New York, I hope, will be there right in front in the years to come doing this.
Amen. Food in 15-minute neighborhoods for an hour. There you go.
We have come to time. I just wanted to say a thank you to everyone in this room who had the courage to raise their hand and ask a question. Sorry, we didn't get to all of them. Maybe we can save them somewhere in the chat just so that we have a copy. And if there's anybody we can follow up with, that would be great. Thank you, Shaun and Chef. You are superheroes. And it's not every day that 2 superheroes come into a room wearing their capes to fight food insecurity from both the philanthropic sector and the political space or the government side, and also the private side. And it goes back, Jose, to what you said about the 3-prong approach and us all coming together to work together from different angles to find innovative solutions forward. So again, thank you from all of us, and hopefully we'll see everybody at the polls and out in the streets helping where volunteers are needed.
Thank you, Samantha. You're a superhero yourself. We're the food Avengers, maybe, or something like that. And Jose, muchísimas gracias.
Shaun, thank you, my friend, and best of luck this election.
All right. See you soon.
Bye, my friend. Good luck.
Thank you all.